Stay with me because by the end of this video, I'll show you how the twins pulled off the ultimate trick, setting their divorced mom up on a blind date with their secret billionaire father. But hold on, the passionate reunion that follows isn't what anyone could have predicted. And just when you think the story is over, something happens that will completely change the course of their lives forever. You won't believe what's coming next.
What if the person you've been avoiding for 20 years is the only one who can make your heart whole again? Family secrets don't just hide in shadows. They can transform destinies in a single heartbeat. When long-buried truths emerge, they don't just change the past, they rewrite the future. Have you ever wondered what happened to someone who disappeared from your life? What would you do if you discovered they were watching from afar all along? That their absence wasn't abandonment but something far more complex? In the quiet corners of coastal Oregon, twin sisters Lila and Nora Harper grew up in a home filled with love but haunted by questions. Their mother Claire built them a world of stability and warmth, but the whispered name of their father remained a forbidden melody, until the day they uncovered the truth. Their father hadn't vanished into obscurity. He had become Thomas Reeves, the reclusive tech genius worth billions, whose innovations had shaped the digital landscape from his empire in San Francisco. The man who had never sent a birthday card had been following their lives from a careful distance, his reasons locked behind walls of wealth and isolation. Caught between their mother's decades of silence and their father's unexplained absence, the twins faced an impossible choice: respect the boundaries that had defined their family, or risk everything to bridge the divide that had kept them incomplete. What would happen when decades of silence finally broke into words? When a carefully orchestrated chance encounter brought face-to-face two people who had built separate lives from the ashes of shared memories? The fog-shrouded beauty of Oregon's coastline stands worlds apart from the gleaming glass towers of San Francisco's tech corridor. But for the Harper twins, these contrasting landscapes were about to collide in ways none of them could have predicted, all because of one daring plan to reunite the parents who never stopped loving each other. Lila and Nora Harper entered the world 11 minutes apart on a rain-soaked April morning. Despite being identical in appearance, anyone who knew them could tell them apart in seconds. Lila, the firstborn, emerged with her tiny fists already clenched, ready to tackle the world head-on. By age 7, she maintained a color-coded homework planner. By 12, she was balancing her mother's checkbook. Practical to her core, Lila approached life as a series of problems to be solved, obstacles to overcome. Her gaze was steady, her words measured, her decisions weighed carefully against potential consequences. Nora, by contrast, arrived with wide eyes that seemed to see beyond the delivery room walls. Where Lila planned, Nora imagined. Her bedroom overflowed with half-finished paintings and journals filled with stories. She collected possibilities like others collected souvenirs. To Nora, the world wasn't a problem to solve, but a mystery to explore, full of hidden meanings and unexpected connections. Yet for all their differences, the twins shared an unspoken language that excluded everyone else. One would begin a sentence, the other would finish it. Lila knew when Nora was upset before the first tear fell. Nora could sense Lila's rare moments of uncertainty before her sister even acknowledged them to herself. Their bond wasn't just emotional, it was elemental. Their mother Claire stood at the center of their universe. After the divorce, she had moved them from Seattle to the small coastal town of Cannon Beach, Oregon. There she rebuilt their lives piece by piece, working first as a waitress, then a bookkeeper, eventually opening a modest but successful seaside bakery. "We don't need much to be happy," she would tell them, flour dusting her cheekbones as she kneaded dough before dawn. "Just enough to be free." Claire never complained about the long hours or the strain of raising 2 children alone. If she was exhausted, she hid it behind bright smiles and impromptu dance parties in their small kitchen. If she was lonely, she masked it with book club meetings and community volunteer work. She created traditions unique to their little family of 3. Sunday beach picnics regardless of weather, birthday breakfast in bed, Christmas Eve star watching from their roof. But there were boundaries the twins learned not to cross. Questions about their father met with brief, neutral responses that revealed almost nothing. He moved away to start a new business, or we wanted different things from life. No photographs of him appeared in their home. His name, Thomas, was mentioned so rarely that it took on an almost mythical quality. The absence shaped them in subtle ways. On father-daughter dances at school, they took turns going with Mr. Henderson, their elderly neighbor who had 5 grandchildren of his own on the opposite coast. When career day came, Lila invented a father who was an astronaut, too busy exploring Mars to attend. Nora's imaginary father was a deep-sea photographer, forever chasing elusive underwater scenes. Their actual memories of Thomas were fragmentary at best. Lila sometimes recalled a deep laugh and the sensation of being tossed high into the air. Nora remembered the smell of mint and the way his glasses would catch the light when he read them, bedtime stories. But these were more impressions than true memories, possibly shaped by wishful thinking rather than reality. As they grew older, the twins treated their father's absence like a dormant volcano, a massive, unmistakable presence in their landscape that everyone had agreed not to discuss. They built their lives around it, adapted to it, but never quite forgot it was there. Their family was happy, genuinely so. Claire had ensured that love flowed abundantly through their home. But happiness doesn't preclude curiosity, and as the twins approached adulthood, the questions they had suppressed began to surface with new urgency. If this story of family secrets resonates with you, hit that like button and let us know in the comments if you've ever reconnected with someone important from your past. The box emerged from the attic during spring cleaning of their sophomore year of college. Home for Easter break, the twins had volunteered to help Claire organize decades of accumulated memories. The afternoon passed in a rhythm of dust, laughter, and nostalgia as they sorted through kindergarten art projects and middle school awards. "What's this?" Nora held up a weathered shoebox, unmarked except for a blue ribbon tied around it. Claire, across the attic sorting holiday decorations, didn't turn quickly enough. Inside lay a collection of letters, photos, and newspaper clippings that didn't match the narrative of their lives. A wedding announcement featuring younger versions of their mother and a tall man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Handwritten letters on expensive stationery, photos of their parents in front of what appeared to be a startup office, their father's arm protectively around Claire's shoulders. "Mom?" Lila's voice wavered. Claire stood frozen, dust motes floating in the beam of sunlight between them. "I was going to tell you both when you graduated," she said finally. "I thought you deserved to know, but I wanted you to form your identities without complication." That night, after a tear-galloped conversation yielding more questions than answers, the twins retreated to their shared childhood bedroom with the box and Lila's laptop. "Thomas Reeves," Nora whispered, typing their father's full name into the search engine. "Let's see what—" She stopped, her fingers suspended above the keyboard as results populated the screen. The man staring back at them from Forbes magazine's cover looked older than in their mother's photos, but unmistakably the same. "Reclusive tech billionaire revolutionizes quantum computing," read the headline. For hours they followed the digital trail of the father they'd never known. Thomas Reeves had founded Quantalogic in Seattle shortly after his divorce. His initial breakthrough in processing algorithms had evolved into one of the most influential tech companies in the world, despite, or perhaps because of, his legendary reclusiveness. Unlike other tech moguls, Thomas shunned publicity. No social media accounts, rare public appearances, almost no photographs newer than 5 years existed online. His privacy was so complete that speculation about his life filled entire forums. "He's been watching us," Lila said suddenly, pointing to an interview where Tomas mentioned donating to a coding competition, the same one she'd won in high school. "He knew exactly who we were and what we were doing." "But never reached out," Nora's voice hardened. "Not once in 20 years. Anger surfaced first. Hot, righteous indignation at the father who had billions for business ventures, but apparently nothing for his daughters. Confusion followed, as they tried to reconcile the gentle-eyed man from their mother's photos with the titan who had chosen absence over fatherhood. Yet beneath these emotions lay a current of relentless curiosity. Why had he stayed away? What did he know about them? Did he ever regret his choice? Night after night, long after Claire assumed they were asleep, the twins whispered theories across the darkness separating their beds. Maybe he thought we were better off without him, Nora suggested. Or maybe Mom kept him away, Lila countered. Whatever the reason, Nora said, we deserve the truth. By the time dawn painted their window on the third morning, the seed of an audacious plan had taken root. If their parents wouldn't bridge the gap that had defined their family for 2 decades, perhaps it was up to the twins to build that bridge themselves. The plan was born on a rain-lashed weekend in late March, when the twins returned to their apartment after spring break. Outside their windows, Seattle's familiar downpour provided a soundtrack to their scheming. What if they met again? Nora mused, curled into the window seat with her third cup of tea. Not as exes with 20 years of baggage, but as strangers with a clean slate. Lila, who had been methodically organizing their findings on a digital corkboard, looked up. A setup? Mom would never agree to meet him. Exactly. Nora leaned forward, excitement brightening her face. So we don't tell her it's him. Their university classes took a backseat to what they began calling Operation Reunion. They approached it with complementary strengths, Lila's precision and Nora's intuition, forming a formidable investigative team. They studied Thomas Reeves with the dedication of biographers. Financial news provided his business movements. Tech blogs revealed his rare speaking engagements. Through patient digging, they discovered his preferences. Independent bookstores, Ethiopian food, acoustic musicians in intimate venues. He goes to this coffee shop in North Beach every other Friday, Lila announced one evening, pointing to a photo in a local San Francisco magazine where their father sat partially obscured in the background. Leora's Cafe. It's small, not trendy, the kind of place where conversations happen. The location secured, they moved to Phase 2, creating a convincing pretext. They invented Michael, a mutual friend from Claire's college days who'd recently reconnected with her through social media. Michael, concerned about his good friend Thomas, who had lost his wife to cancer years ago, thought Claire might be the perfect dinner companion to help him rejoin the world. The fiction required technological finesse. They purchased a new phone, created email accounts, even assembled a rudimentary online presence for Michael that would withstand casual scrutiny. Every detail was considered, every contingency mapped. The hardest part proved to be convincing Claire. Absolutely not, she said when they first suggested a blind date during their weekly video call. I'm perfectly content with my life. For weeks they gently persisted. Nora emphasized how Claire deserved romance and companionship. Lila took a practical approach, noting that meeting new people would expand Claire's social network for her business. Just one coffee, Lila bargained. If you hate it, we'll never mention dating again. Fine, Claire relented eventually. One coffee, 90 minutes maximum. The plan nearly collapsed a dozen times. Thomas canceled a San Francisco trip unexpectedly. Claire caught a spring cold. A leak at the bakery threatened to derail the scheduled weekend. Most frighteningly, Thomas's executive assistant initially declined the meeting request they'd sent from their fictitious matchmaker account. The twins spent a panicked night rewriting the pitch, emphasizing the low-pressure nature of the meeting and the shared connections that would make conversation easy. With 2 days to go, both parents had confirmed. The twins booked last-minute flights to San Francisco, using the emergency fund they'd been building for post-graduation travel. We're either about to heal our family or destroy what's left of it, Lila said as they packed their bags. Nora squeezed her sister's hand. Sometimes you have to break something open to fix what's inside. The twins are taking a huge risk here. Subscribe now to see if their daring plan works or backfires completely. Leora's Cafe nestled between a vintage bookstore and an artisan bakery on a quiet San Francisco side street. Bay windows allowed golden afternoon light to spill across worn wooden floors and mismatched furniture. Plants thrived in copper pots along the windowsills. A record player in the corner filled the space with soft jazz, the kind of place that existed seemingly out of time, where conversations weren't rushed and connections could take root. In her rental car, parked half a block away, Claire checked her appearance one final time. She had chosen a navy blue wrap dress, professional enough for a business meeting, yet suitable for a first meeting with a stranger. Her honey-brown hair, now streaked with silver at the temples, was styled in loose waves that softened her features. "This is ridiculous," she murmured to her reflection. At 45, she had built a life she loved. The bakery was thriving. Her relationship with her daughters was strong. Did she really need to complicate things with dating? Yet something had compelled her to make the 6-hour drive from Cannon Beach. Perhaps it was the twins' persistent encouragement. Perhaps it was the quiet evenings when the house felt too large for one person. Or perhaps it was simple curiosity about who she might be beyond mother, business owner, community member. Inside the cafe, Thomas Reeves had arrived 20 minutes early. He sat at a corner table, his tall frame attempting to fold itself comfortably into a vintage chair. His salt and pepper hair was neatly trimmed, his casual button-down revealing a man who cared about appearances without being showy. The coffee before him had grown cold, untouched. His mind raced through conversation topics appropriate for meeting a stranger: current events, San Francisco architecture, the independent bookstore next door. Anything to mask how long it had been since he'd engaged in casual conversation, unconcerned with market trends or technological breakthroughs. The staff had seated him facing away from the entrance at his request. He preferred a moment to compose himself before meeting someone new. Despite his wealth and influence, or perhaps because of it, Thomas found human connections increasingly difficult to navigate. Near the back of the cafe, partially hidden by a large ficus tree, Leila and Nora maintained their surveillance position. They'd arrived an hour earlier, laptops open as cover for their extended stay. Leila's right leg bounced nervously under the table. Nora's hands wrapped too tightly around her mug. "He looks nervous," Nora whispered, studying their father's profile. "That makes 3 of us," Leila replied, checking her watch. "Mom should be here any minute. Should we text her again?" "No. Too suspicious. We've done everything we can." The bell above the cafe door chimed. The twins froze. Afternoon sunlight haloed Claire's figure as she paused in the doorway, scanning the room. The hostess approached with a warm smile, reservation book in hand. Time seemed to stretch like pulled caramel as Claire was led deeper into the cafe. Each step brought her closer to the man she hadn't seen in 20 years, the man she didn't yet know she was about to meet. Thomas straightened in his chair, sensing the approaching footsteps. The twins held their breath. The hostess gestured to the empty chair across from Thomas. Claire stepped forward, a polite smile fixed on her face. Their eyes met across the table. Recognition flickered, followed by disbelief. "Thomas?" Claire's voice barely carried over the cafe noise. The coffee cup in Thomas's hand froze halfway to his mouth. His complexion paled beneath his tan. "Claire?" For 3 heartbeats they stared at each other, suspended between past and present. Then Claire's expression hardened. She gripped her purse, knuckles whitening, and pushed her chair back. "I'm leaving," she said, voice low but firm. "I don't know what game you're playing." "Please," Thomas said, raising his palm in a gesture that was half surrender, half plea. 5 minutes. That's all I ask." The cafe continued its gentle hum around them, customers chatting, baristas calling out orders, the record player switching to a new track. But for Claire and Thomas, the world had narrowed to their table, to the impossible fact of each other's presence. "You engineered this?" Claire remained standing, her body angled toward the exit. "No." Thomas shook his head. "I was told I was meeting someone named Ellen, a friend of a friend." Understanding dawned on his face, unless Claire's eyes widened. "The girls," she whispered. From their hidden vantage point, the twins exchanged glances of mingled terror and triumph. Slowly, Claire lowered herself back into her chair. 5 minutes, she conceded, "then I'm gone." Thomas nodded, relief washing over his features. "You look wonderful," he offered, then immediately seemed to regret the familiarity. "I'm sorry. That's not... why did you agree to a blind date, Thomas?" Claire cut through his stammering with the directness he'd once admired. "Surely billionaires don't need help meeting people." He smiled faintly. "The same reason you did, perhaps. Curiosity. Loneliness." His fingers traced the rim of his cup. "The world gets smaller when you become visible for the wrong reasons." "Visible?" Claire gave a short, incredulous laugh. "You disappeared from our lives completely." "To protect you." Thomas leaned forward, intensity replacing his earlier nervousness. "When quanta logic took off, everything changed. Overnight, I had competitors trying to steal proprietary information, journalists digging into my personal life, security threats that kept me awake at night. So you cut off your family, your children?" "I made a choice I thought was right at the time." His voice held steady, but pain shadowed his eyes. "The divorce was still fresh. You'd made it clear you wanted a clean break, a chance to build something without me. Then suddenly I had resources, but also enemies. I thought..." He hesitated. "I genuinely believed you and the girls would be safer if no one knew you were connected to me." Claire stared at him, searching his face. 20 years, Thomas. You missed everything. First days of school, broken arms, science fairs, graduations. I didn't miss as much as you think." Her eyebrows rose. "I hired people. Ethical people," he added quickly. "Not to intrude, just to keep me informed. I have photos of every play, every award ceremony. I made anonymous donations to their college funds. When Lila won that coding championship, I was watching the live stream." "You were watching from a distance while I was in the trenches." Claire's voice sharpened. "Do you have any idea what it did to them, growing up without a father? The void they tried to fill with imagination, the questions I couldn't answer? Lila approaches every relationship expecting abandonment. Nora writes stories where the missing parent always returns to make everything right." Thomas flinched as if struck. "I wanted to reach out so many times, but the longer I waited, the harder it became. And then..." He gestured helplessly. "The company went public. The wealth attracted even more attention. By then, you'd all built lives without me. Who was I to disrupt that with my complications? That wasn't your decision to make alone." Claire's anger had softened into something more complex, a mixture of old pain and new understanding. Thomas nodded slowly. "You're right. It was cowardice disguised as protection." He looked up, meeting her gaze directly. "I've made many mistakes in my life, Claire. Leaving you and the girls tops the list." Something shifted in Claire's posture. The 5 promised minutes had come and gone, yet she remained. "They found you, didn't they? The girls engineered this whole meeting." A small smile touched Thomas's lips. "They must be extraordinary young women." "They are." For the first time, warmth entered Claire's voice. Brilliant, determined, compassionate, somehow, despite everything, they became people any parent would be proud of. "Tell me about them," Thomas said softly. "Not the achievements I've tracked. Tell me who they really are." Claire hesitated, then reached for her phone. She pulled up a recent photo. The twins at the ocean, wind tangling their hair, arms around each other's shoulders, laughing at something beyond the frame. "This is them," she said, passing him the phone. "Lila is on the left. She's the practical one, always making lists, solving problems. Full scholarship to computer science at UW. Nora," her voice softened further, "dreams with her eyes open, studies literature and psychology, sees connections nobody else notices." Thomas stared at the image, his fingers hovering over the screen as if afraid to touch it. When he looked up, his eyes glistened. "They have your smile," he managed, "and my mother's eyes." Claire felt unexpected tears forming. "They're watching us right now, aren't they?" Thomas glanced around the cafe, a genuine smile breaking across his face. "Definitely. Probably analyzing our body language and calculating the probability of success." For the first time in 20 years, they laughed together. "This conversation is changing 2 decades of misunderstanding." Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for reconciliation. Claire spotted them first. "Your surveillance team is getting restless," she told Thomas, nodding toward the back corner. He turned, following her gaze to where Lila and Nora huddled behind their laptops, poorly concealed by the cafe's greenery. Their wide eyes met his, a mixture of fear and hope visible even across the room. "Should we invite them over?" Thomas asked, his voice uncertain. Claire considered for a moment, then raised her hand, beckoning her daughters. The twins exchanged glances, gathered their belongings with deliberate slowness, and approached. "So," Claire said as they reached the table, arms crossed over her chest, "this wasn't exactly the blind date you promised?" Lila stepped forward. "Mom, we can explain." "I think the explanation is fairly obvious," Claire interrupted, though her tone lacked real anger. "You lied to get us both here." "We created an opportunity," Nora corrected gently, "for a conversation that was 20 years overdue." Thomas stood awkwardly, his tall frame suddenly seeming too large for the intimate space. He looked at his daughters, adult women now, not the toddlers preserved in his memory, and found himself speechless. Lila extended her hand formally. "I'm Lila. I don't expect you to remember which is which." Thomas ignored the offered hand and moved forward hesitantly. "May I?" he asked, opening his arms slightly. Lila nodded, her composure cracking. When his arms closed around her, she pressed her face against his shoulder, inhaling the unfamiliar scent of him. Expensive cologne with undertones of mint, just as Nora had described from their fragmented memories. Nora joined the embrace without hesitation, completing the circle. For a moment they stood frozen in time, the cafe fading around them. Claire watched, emotions battling within her. Anger at the deception warred with reluctant gratitude for their courage. Protective instinct clashed with recognition of their right to know their father. Most conflicting was the unexpected ache she felt watching Thomas hold their daughters. A glimpse of what might have been, what should have been, all these years. "Well," she said when they finally separated, all three wiping away tears, "I think this calls for dinner. A proper conversation in a private setting." Thomas booked a private dining room at a nearby restaurant, making calls while the twins explained how they'd orchestrated everything. Claire's expressions shifted between disbelief, grudging admiration, and occasional flashes of hurt as she learned how elaborate their plan had been. "You couldn't just ask me," she said finally, "after all we've been through together?" "Would you have said yes?" Lila challenged gently. Claire's silence was answered enough. Dinner that evening carried the weight of 2 decades of absence. They sat around a circular table in a quiet room with views of the bay, water, and sky darkening to indigo beyond the windows. The conversation lurched and stumbled. Questions began only to trail off unfinished. Laughter would rise and dissolve into uncomfortable silences. They were strangers performing an intricate dance, learning each other's rhythms. "I don't expect forgiveness," Thomas said when their meals arrived, "or even understanding. But I'd like the chance to know you both now, if you'll allow it." "On what terms?" Lila asked, direct as always. "Weekend visits? Holiday cards? Where do we go from here?" Thomas looked to Claire, acknowledging her primacy in their daughters' lives. "That's not entirely my decision." "You're their father," Claire said quietly. "They deserve the chance to know you." But her gaze intensified. "No more secrets. No more decisions made for our protection without our input." "Agreed," Thomas nodded solemnly. "And we need to establish some boundaries," Claire continued. "We can't rush into playing happy family after 20 years apart." Nora, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. "We're not asking for happy family overnight. We're asking for honesty, for presence, for the chance to build something new from what was broken." As the evening progressed, defenses gradually lowered. Thomas shared stories of his parents, grandparents, the twins had never known. Claire revealed challenges from their childhood she had previously kept to herself. The twins spoke of their discoveries, their detective work, their hopes. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was the necessary first incision that makes healing possible. 1 month after the cafe reunion, Subtle transformations rippled through all four lives. Thomas appeared in Cannon Beach on a Tuesday afternoon, without warning or fanfare. He rented a modest beachfront cottage 2 miles from Claire's home. Close enough for convenience, far enough to maintain necessary space. Within days, locals noticed the distinguished gray-hailed man walking the shoreline at sunrise, stopping occasionally at Claire's bakery, or sharing weekend lunches with the twins. "Quanta logic can function without me hovering in the San Francisco office," he explained when Claire questioned the wisdom of his move. "I've been working remotely half the time anyway. The board nearly fell over when I announced I'm taking a 3-month sabbatical, first one in 20 years. What he didn't say, but Claire understood, was that he was making up for lost time, establishing himself in their world rather than expecting them to enter his. Inside the cottage, Thomas created a secondary command center for his company. Screens lined one wall, displaying real-time data from projects around the globe. But unlike his previous work patterns, he kept firm boundaries. After 6 p.m., the monitors went dark. Weekends belonged to family attempts, sometimes awkward, increasingly comfortable, to build connections. For Claire, accepting Thomas back into her life, even peripherally, challenged defenses built across decades. She found herself analyzing his every action, searching for ulterior motives or signs he might vanish again. Yet watching him with their daughters slowly eroded her skepticism. "He brought photo albums," she told her oldest friend during their weekly call, "not just pictures of the girls from a distance, pictures of his parents, his childhood, his college years, all the stories he never got to tell them." "Are you falling for him again?" her friend asked pointedly. "I'm learning to see who he is now," Claire answered carefully. "That's enough for the moment." For Lila and Nora, experiencing family completeness brought unexpected emotions. The fantasy father constructed from fragments and wishes disappeared, replaced by a real man, brilliant but socially awkward, generous yet sometimes oblivious to emotional cues, desperately trying to bridge the chasm his absence had created. "It's strange," Lila admitted during a sister walk along the beach. "I spent my life imagining this mythical father figure, and now he's just human," Nora finished. "Flawed. Trying his best. Still feels like we're getting to know a stranger." Nora smiled. "Isn't that better than loving a ghost?" The most significant changes happened during Sunday brunches, which became a tentative tradition. Seated around Claire's weathered dining table, they navigated new family dynamics. Early attempts featured forced conversation and painful silences. By the 4th Sunday, genuine laughter emerged. By the 6th, they stayed talking until evening darkened the windows. "I missed you at the science fair," Lila told Thomas during one such dinner, giving voice to decades of absence. "And graduation, and when I won the coding championship." Thomas didn't flinch from her raw honesty. "I can't change that. But I'm here now, for whatever comes next." "If you promise to stay," Nora added, the dreamer still needing reassurance. "I promise to try," Thomas answered, understanding that absolutes wouldn't heal what honesty could. Claire, watching this exchange, realized that forgiveness wasn't a destination, but a daily choice. Not erasing the past, but refusing to let it dictate the future. Communication meant speaking difficult truths rather than comfortable half-answers. Second chances required courage from both the giver and receiver. Their story reminds us that sometimes the greatest risks bring the greatest rewards. Like this video if it touched your heart, subscribe for more stories of remarkable reunions, and tell us in the comments, what family relationship would you repair if you could? Time doesn't heal all wounds, people do. In the case of the Harper family, 20 years of separation couldn't be erased with a single cafe meeting or a month of Sunday brunches. Real healing came through deliberate choices made day after day, showing up, listening without judgment, extending grace when old hurts resurfaced. Family exists beyond blood and beyond time. It can fragment and reform, weather absences and returns. The Harper Reeves family discovered that reconciliation isn't a moment, but a journey. Each step forward rebuilding trust that had crumbled through years of silence. What began with two determined young women refusing to accept the shape of their fractured family transformed 4 lives. Their courage reminds us that sometimes the walls we build for protection become the very barriers that prevent our healing. Forgiveness, when authentic, doesn't minimize past pain, but rather refuses to let that pain determine future possibilities. It acknowledges what was lost while creating space for what might still be found. As we reflect on their journey, imagine these moments playing across the screen. Thomas and Claire sitting on the beach at sunset, not touching but comfortable in shared silence. Lila teaching her father the family recipe for Claire's famous sourdough. Nora reading aloud from her journal while Thomas listens, tears gathering in his eyes. Claire watching from the doorway as her daughters laugh with their father, her expression a complex mixture of wonder and acceptance. 6 months after that fateful cafe meeting, the twins graduated from university. Standing beneath blooming cherry trees, the 4 gathered for a photograph. Claire and Thomas on either side of their daughters, a respectful distance between them but pride uniting them. As the camera captured the moment, Nora whispered something that made them all break into genuine laughter. Some families are born, others are rebuilt. All are worth fighting for.